right, welcome back for another Conversations with the Commissioner. This is going to be a really neat episode. Today we have Gina Koke with us and a couple of other members from the Developmental Disability team. And we're going to dive into all the awesome things that they're doing and what they've been doing over the past few years. So welcome, Gina. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. It's always good to get people in and hear about what you're doing, because I think it's important to share, because there's so much here at DBHDS that I think people don't realize what's going on.
I agree.
And that's where that whole One DBHDS message is really, we're trying to get people to understand that you're part of something. Even though you may not be working in developmental disabilities, you get to hear what your colleagues are doing and the impacts they're making, and you're part of that.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. Well, so tell me about, you're in the customized rate area within the waiver services?
Yes. So let me just tell you a little bit about Medicaid waiver, because that's really, our department is a little offshoot of that.
Yeah.
So the Medicaid waiver, for people who may not know, was developed as a way to provide a different opportunity for people with developmental disabilities who otherwise would have found their home in a facility, such as an institution. And so it came about as a way to get people out into the community. And, there's basically rates that go along with certain types of supports and services. And sometimes those rates are not enough to care for some people who we call outliers. And so they don't kind of fall into the little boxes that we put sometimes things into. So some people have exceptional behavioral or exceptional medical needs, and providers want to help them, but a lot of times these exceptional needs are very expensive.
So just going back, and that's a really good information, I think, but going back to like the waiver itself, like why is it called a waiver? What are we waiving? And
So,
that was always
okay.
like, that was big for me to learn.
Yeah, well, good news. I've done a lot of teaching about this, so that's really good. And basically, a waiver gets you out of something, right? So if you had military, you got a waiver so you could not do something and go somewhere else, right? Or go have leave or whatever. And so basically, it's the same thing with Medicaid waiver. Is we're saying you don't have to go to an institutional setting. You can be given another choice in the community. And not just one choice in the community, but several different options.
Right. Yeah, and it's all based on the Social Securities Act, right? That kind of outlines definitively, these are the things that we have to do.
So yes, there are some court cases that came about during the Reagan administration that really kind of kicked this all off.
Yeah.
And so that's where it kind of started, because there was a family that had a child and they wanted to keep her at home.
Right.
But the only money that was coming in was not able to keep them at home working with her, taking care of her, paying for help.
Yeah.
And so they pretty much, went and tried to find a different way. And that's how waiver really came about in the beginning.
Yeah. And I know there are different types of waivers, and I don't know if you want to go into that level of detail,
sure.
But it's just, what I have learned is that, especially when the governor set out to eliminate the priority one wait list,
Yes.
Just being there in the audience and watching the reaction.
Yeah, it's big.
Oh, it's the biggest thing I've ever been part of in my life. So I can't imagine how you must feel.
Absolutely wonderful. It's a huge undertaking, and I can't thank the governor enough, to be honest, because so many people have been waiting so many years.
Right.
We still have a lot further to go, but that priority one, that's a lot of people. Right. And a lot of families who are now going to be able to have the same options for their loved ones.
Right. So now that you're on this side, I know before you were in the private sector like myself.
Yeah.
How was that, and how do you see the differences now and benefits or not?
Yeah. So I have, previous to coming here 4 years ago, about 4.5 years ago, I had been providing waiver services through different means for about 22 years. And so, as a director and administrator and different things for different agencies in the community, I have done every waiver service. I have overseen or implemented every waiver service except nursing.
Right.
That was one area that I hadn't gotten into. So, my experience with that is quite great. So, when I came here, I felt a very strong need to help other providers who feel like they're on the outside to know that they have somebody who can help explain things to them, and make DBHDS a little more friendly to them. Some people feel, aren't sure how to deal with, DMAS and DBHDS and what's expected and things like that. So when they come to me regarding the customized rate, I can help them understand how things work. And knowing their side of it, usually they breathe a big sigh of relief because they feel like somebody understands. And I don't think they realize that there are a lot of people here who really do understand.
That's right.
And so I'm just one little door to showing them that there are a lot of people here who understand where they're coming from and are really trying to help them.
Yeah. Sounds like a peer specialist. Shout out to the peers out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With the,
Yeah.
well, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you're here because that definitely is a major need because it's very complex, as I've learned, and I still don't even know enough about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then in your spare time, you like to do things like volunteering for your local human rights
Committee. Yeah.
committee. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that is a huge thing
Mm-hmm.
that I don't think a lot of people realize. Another area here in DBHDS is our Human Rights Division, that they
Right.
are critically vital to the behavioral health care, the whole system.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the Human Rights Board, well, you tell me.
Okay, sure.
Yes,
So there's a state human rights committee,
Yeah.
and then there's individual human rights committees throughout the state for each area, sometimes by county, sometimes by city. And so prior to coming to DBHDS, because I can't serve on it now that I work here, but prior to that, I spent about a total of 6 years on 3 different committees. And I know that people out there who know how that works will say, Gina, you were on there too long. But actually, I just switched different committees because other ones consolidated and we start the time over again because you kind of roll off, like with other boards, you kind of roll off after a certain period of time. But basically, I love human rights. I love to advocate for human rights. And people with developmental disabilities, they don't have the wherewithal sometimes to be able to speak up for themselves. And so these committees are of immense importance. And I couldn't recommend enough that people really try to volunteer for it because it's not that huge of a commitment. It's usually once a quarter that the meetings are held. There may be sometimes, special meetings called, but overall, it's not that much time, and you are doing a huge service to individuals in the community who need your help to ensure that they are not being abused or neglected.
Yeah.
It's really something I have encouraged so many people to join because it also gives you great insight into how the system works and how you can help people partake in the positive areas of our system.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the volunteering twice.
Yeah.
You did that and you volunteered to join us.
Yes.
We're just glad you're
Yeah.
here.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Anything you want to ask me?
Yes. So, interestingly, I know a lot of things about the waiver. I know a lot of things about our DD division, but I don't know a lot about the other sides of our whole department. So, for instance, crisis or behavioral health. And I'm just wondering what you think would be a good way for those of us who are interested in getting to know more. How can we do that? How can we have bridges to that kind of information and communication?
That's a good question. And a good example is what we're doing right now, is that everybody that's engaging with this, you get to hear what you're doing. And so like the previous ones, we heard from IT, we heard from crisis. There's a lot more to learn and more to come. Also, we have lunch and learns. So Lauren Cunningham and her team do a wonderful job putting these on to highlight, different departments Also, we have, our website is being rebuilt, along with this rebranding and everything else. There's so many good opportunities here in DBHDS, and we just want to share all of that. So
Yeah.
again, maybe you want to do a career change instead of leaving us. You can get into
Yeah.
forensics.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not leaving anytime soon. Trust me. I love it here.
Sure.
And I feel very much a part of something wonderful.
Yeah.
But I have watched some of those lunch and learns, and you're right. That is a really good way to one of the good ways to do that.
Yeah.
Something I had read about that I don't know anything about that maybe you could tell me is something called, I believe, APAC.
APAL.
APAL. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
APAL. So there, please enlighten me.
Yeah, it's very new. It's the Adult Psychiatric Assistance or Advice Line, and we've partnered with the Medical Society of Virginia, and it's really cool. I'd say, have you heard of VMAP, the Virginia Mental Health Access Program?
A little bit, yeah.
So it's something, when I stepped in, I inherited this program, and I learned about it. I was like, why don't we do more of this? So what it does is, we have a workforce shortage.
Hmm.
I would say in Virginia, but also, just nationwide in healthcare.
That's very true.
And so we are doing all these great things for long term, but those things are going to take time. So the urgency in action was, how can we do with what we have now?
Okay.
And so when I looked at, so what VMAP does is just that. It has pediatricians are treating or dealing with kids with mental health issues or behavioral health care problems in their offices all over Virginia, but they just didn't have the means or supports to know how to deal with it. They don't know how to refer know where to refer or even what to do, right? So what it did was created a program to surround them and provide case management or care coordinator line they can call.
Okay.
They can get rapid access to psychiatric support. So if they want to learn or what they should do or for prescribing, it helps them with that. There are classes that go in with continuing education and helps, move their advance their knowledge in behavioral health care. So they feel more comfortable, and thousands of physicians have leaned into this too.
Wow.
So when we thought about it, it was like, why can't we do this for adults?
Yeah.
And so the hotline was born, or the program was born off of that there was a framework for this already established.
Okay.
And so now we're rolling out substance abuse treatment to primary care physicians supports throughout the Commonwealth, and using a model of success, and so we can grow it rapidly. So it was one of those things, I used to be a Green Beret.
Yes.
I could not talk about or think about, like, how do I deal with this problem? And I can't complain that I don't have the resources to do it. I sure could have used, I don't know, X-ray goggles, or whatever it is, or laser beams.
Right.
I don't have that.
Right.
And so what do we have? And so you take inventory of what we had, and this is something that I call a force multiplier. And I hope and pray that this has a tremendous impact in the lives of Virginians, and also the physicians. I mean, they're dealing with it right now. So that's APAL, and I obviously love it.
Yeah, it sounds great. And, that could also cross over to the developmental disability side, because a lot of physicians do not know how to deal with that type of population either. And they kind of go together.
Right.
So that's great.
Well, we're starting with substance abuse,
Yeah,
with the idea to expand in the future into other things. And so
that's exciting.
yeah, it's cool.
Very nice.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank
I appreciate
you.
it. And we'll see you out there.
Yes.
In the field.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Cheers. We'd like to welcome our next guest. Hello.
Hi.
Ma'am. Nice to meet you. Latoya Brown works in our a data analyst in the waiver management system. And before we get started, I would just like to say that those shoes are dope.
Thank you.
I like it. They're strong.
I appreciate that.
Well, welcome. Tell us, how did you get into this?
So considering you noticing my shoes, you'll appreciate this. Prior to this role, I was self-employed as a personal fashion stylist.
Okay.
Yeah. So
all right. So we can do some work. I need some help.
I'm happy to help, although I don't see anywhere where you need help. I think you're doing really well.
You heard that.
So what I would do is work with executives or business owners or people who had some visibility in the public space to make sure that their brand aligned with their wardrobe and that they were presenting themselves in the way they wanted to. So we would go shopping and curate their wardrobes and stuff. And then I got completely burnt out. I'm quite the introvert, although sometimes it doesn't appear that way. I know. One of those special introverts where I just get very tired when I spend a lot of time with people one on one. So I knew that I always had an interest in technology, and I wanted to figure out how my interests would align with all of the various areas of technology. And I landed in data. And so, as I looked at ways that I could use this new skill set that, I'd done some self teaching and exploring and community work with, the role at DBHDS came up, and it really does align with my values and how I see technology helping the well being of all people and making sure that I can have an impact.
Well, that's really interesting because it sounds like you have a creative mind. Like you like to figure things out, and I don't know if there are two types of minds that I've heard of, where algebraic and geometric. I don't know if you see the shapes or the numbers.
I see the shapes.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah.
And there's some creativity involved there. How do you think that applies to your current job?
Right. So it's interesting that you say, there are two types of mindsets. And I'm more of the thinking of they're not mutually exclusive, right?
Okay.
You can leverage your creative side and your analytical side. And I have a goal of like showing that to people where it's not just about one dimension. And you can absolutely, and I love leveraging my creative side in the analytical work that I do. Some of the things are data and data visualizations can be very creative. So a lot of creativity is expression, right? And when you're trying to express complex ideas to a lot of people, having creative resources or creative understanding can help you get those ideas across. So whether it's how to map out a chart or how to explain a number or how to have a conversation about what is the business goal you're trying to achieve through generating this data or through cleaning this data or presenting this data. But there's a lot of creativity that goes along with that.
Yes, that is impressive. Sorry, I just had a whole flood of thoughts related to what
it's a deep subject.
It
You
is
could go
so
on
cool.
and on and on.
Yes, because people don't realize, to your point, you see these numbers,
Yeah.
but then to creatively visualize what it means to accomplish either a strategic plan or simplistic idea, that's really cool.
And we really have an obligation to there's so much data in the world. We have an obligation to break it down and make it consumable so
Right.
that we can do something with it and have actions related to
Yeah.
it, right?
So that's fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what do you got anything for me?
As we talk about data,
Mhm.
a lot of conversation is going on about artificial intelligence and AI.
Mhm.
So what are your thoughts and how do you see us as a organization using that in the work that we do?
Yeah, one of the things I'm very proud of is advancing this agency technologically, modernization,
Mm.
which is one of our big objectives or domains for the strategic plan, right? We've got the workforce, continuum of care, and modernization. And we've brought in a lot of people from the private industry to help, kind of build the frameworks to this. So the bottom line is I want to lean into it and see how we can use it to benefit the work that we do here, because there's a lot of things that we can do with it. And so I'm not afraid of it.
Nice.
I want us to we don't need to be the first person to run this race, and we don't want to be last. But I think at the speed of which the adoption is going, I think we're moving at a good pace. So let me be clear. I want to do the basics first,
Mm.
right? We've got to get our infrastructure solidified here, meaning, the data warehouse, that we've got all the taxonomy, meaning we've labeled all the data and making sure we're speaking common languages. And so let's get all those things solidified and then really start looking at how we can work with this. But I want to do it, lean into it.
You're absolutely right, because data and all of the little pieces of information that we plug into the fields and the systems that we have, that's the building block, right, for artificial intelligence. And I completely agree with you about not being the first, but not being the last. But it's so important that we have a stake in it, because not only do we want to learn how to benefit from it, but we want to make sure there aren't gaps in the artificial intelligence knowledge about the people in our community, or
That's right.
the diversity of thought.
That's
So
right.
I really think it's important, and I agree that we have a stake in it.
That's right. We're only as good as the information. The machine itself is going to do what it does, right?
Yep.
But if our data that we're putting into it's not right or accurate or valid or reliable, like then what are the outputs going to be? And conversely, the same thing. The outputs have to be like, yes, we want to be intentional.
How do you feel? What do you feel is important about accessibility as it relates to technology?
Yeah, this is something that I think is incredibly important to me and to the secretary, to this administration, so much so that we came up with a comprehensive plan to address this. And we brought in some help to identify shortcomings in the area, but in behavioral health care on accessibility. To give you an example of, we've got a lot of work to do, like in the community services boards or even within our own agency documents. These are things that we take for granted. So someone who has a serious mental illness, and let's say they're blind.
Yep.
All right, how are they going to see the documents, or deaf, or there's so many co-occurring disabilities that may impact this individual's life. And we've got to be able to help them do that, because everybody deserves a chance to access help. And it's basic stuff like documents. Again, it's and language. Are there languages? So we had to do a deep dive on see where you'd assume Spanish, but in some areas of Virginia, you might have Farsi or other languages that these documents need to be translated into. I talked about our website revamp, and that's going to be a really cool part of that is you can click on a button and it'll change to whatever language it is. We've got a lot of opportunity, and we need to do better.
Yep. I totally see that. And I'm glad that there's so much that we're doing. One of the lessons that I learned when I was entering technology was when you're building, to start from the need of the most vulnerable, right? So start with the most accessible version, because then you'll capture more people and allow access to more people as you're building from that point of view. So it's really great that we're keeping that in mind as we continue to build programs and the simplest things.
Yeah. We used the most complex case studies to drive us into, where do we need to work?
That's a smart start.
Yeah.
Did not mean to rhyme, but yes, it's a smart start. Okay. So what new things do you have to report, or new insights do you have about the strategic plan?
So you want me to brag on everybody?
Please do.
Man, I'm so proud this is the coolest job I've ever had. Because, I just love, my favorite thing in the world is watching, like putting things together and giving research, just teams winning. I like to win. And when we win in this job, all the people that we take care of in Virginia are winning, right? So it's really cool. A good example of that is, in our 988, the crisis continue and build out. We've exceeded almost all the targets since we set out to do that through Right Help right now, whether it's through building the crisis receiving centers, the mobile crisis teams, the hotline. I mean, we're getting 15,000 calls a month. And again, Virginia is leading the nation in the rollout of this program. And so that team, well, it didn't exist, 2 years ago. There was no crisis division. So they've been building this thing from ground up. I mentioned peers earlier. We set a target to have, increase the workforce in certified peer recovery specialists. We have eclipsed that goal. I mean, we've doubled it. We're looking at doubling it again. I mean, it's just amazing when you give the direction, or they set the goals, and then this is what you need, go. And I'm hearing wonderful things from all over Virginia. These are people who have walked the walk, been in, they lived experience, and they want to give back. And I'm really proud to say that working with the General Assembly and everyone to get this legislation changed to reduce barrier crimes. We've added 1,000 plus more people to the peer workforce because of this. The waivers, we eliminated, or set out to reduce the priority, or eliminate the priority one waiver slot. And we did that through an massive allocation of over $300 million. I mean, I could keep going. We set out our data modernization. We're on track to, move things into a cloud-based system and this data exchange and data warehouse. This is revolutionary for state agencies to do. Upskilling, Russell and his team over there, they're upskilling everyone to be AWS certified so we can, continually develop and build our own things or maintain it. There's just so many cool activities, and we're achieving our goals. And you know why?
Why is that?
I didn't make the goals.
Right.
The people made the goals. Everybody in all of your offices are the ones that set those goals because we asked. I just said workforce modernization, the big, massive,
big ideas. And then
great.
How are we going to achieve this?
Right. And turned around and said, all right, team, what do we do? And everybody did it. They came together. And so now you see all these plans, when they're being achieved, it builds up into those big things.
That's really exciting.
It is.
And I can tell you are excited for us, and I'm excited for us as well.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yes. And I'll see you around.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Welcome back. Our next guest is Sara Thompson. Tell me what you do.
So my official title is the Supported Decision-Making Community Resource Consultant Lead, which is just a lot of words. That means that I go around the state and talk with anyone and everyone who's willing to talk with me about supported decision-making and supported decision-making agreements.
Yeah. What does that mean? So pretend I have no idea, which isn't going to be very hard. What exactly does that entail? Supported decision-making, who's it for? What is it for?
Supported decision-making is something that we all already do. We're using people that we trust, or in a world of technology, resources that we trust to get the information we need to make an informed decision if we need that kind of help. So it's something we all already do. A lot of times, though, there might be people with disabilities that aren't afforded that opportunity. People just assume if you have a certain diagnosis or disability, then you can't make decisions at all for yourself. Supported decision-making is a way for people to really say, who do I want to help me? How do I want help? What kinds of things do I want help with? And it is viewed as an alternative to guardianship. In Virginia, we have supported decision-making agreements, which is a formal document that lays all of that information out. And it's something that people with developmental disabilities can utilize as a way to keep their legal rights, keep their decision-making authority, and to avoid things like guardianship where people lose their rights.
Yeah. And so tell me a day in the life. What does that look like?
Oh man, every day varies.
Sure. I'm sure that's really cool too, right?
So my favorite days are when I actually get to talk with individuals with disabilities or their family members who are interested in learning about these alternatives and ways that they can support their loved ones, and to avoid things like guardianship. So we'll talk about what the options are in Virginia, the different decision-making options. We've kind of created these discovery tools that help people think through what kinds of things do I like or do I want to be helped in? What ways do I like to be helped? And who's in my life that could support me with that? And I help them kind of create their plans. Other days I'm out training, whether it's virtually or in person. I'm working with community services boards, providers, advocacy agencies, and organizations that want to know more about supported decision making and how they can promote it throughout the Commonwealth.
So I think it sounds like that's a very rewarding job. I can't imagine sometimes you get families that come to you and just thank you. I'm guessing.
I find it very rewarding. I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoy helping people understand their rights,
Sure.
helping people understand what's available to them so that they can keep those rights.
Right.
Again, it's something we all use. So why, just because somebody has a specific diagnosis, should they not be afforded the same opportunity to lead their life and to make decisions about their lives?
Yeah. It just sounds really cool, meaningful.
It is. It is. I am very fortunate to get to do what I do.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're doing it. And so I guess all of that was to ask, how does one get into this field? Like, what are the specifics of that?
So I'm a social worker.
Okay.
I got into this field, I guess it was kind of put into me at a young age. We started volunteering for as long as I can remember as a family. We would volunteer in our community. And one of the things that I picked up on through most of these volunteer opportunities is that there was usually either one person or a team of people coordinating whatever this event was or whatever this resource was, and that was a social worker. Mm-hmm. And I really fell in love with this idea of helping connect people to either the information or resources that they need, because it's, you know, we have a lot of systems. They aren't always the easiest to navigate. They don't always talk to each other. Right. And so it can be quite difficult. So to be able to come in and learn a system and support somebody with navigating that so that they can live the life that they want, you know, I can't imagine doing anything else. Yeah. Got a degree in social work, and then I've worked in private organizations. Most of my time was at community services boards. Following that, I've done everything from children's mental health to adult mental health, and then most of my time in developmental services before coming here.
Well, again, we're glad you're here. And how long have you been here?
Almost 3 years.
Okay. It's almost as long as me.
I was going to say the position came about around a similar time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Man, time flies.
It does. It really does.
30 years. I know you were nominated, and I actually wanted to Thankful Thursday.
Oh, yes.
Earlier. That was really cool. And we're very, very happy, proud of that program. We're glad everyone's engaging with it. Continue to do so. I think we got a backlog. There's so many people that want to just give thanks to everybody and your colleagues. Is there somebody that you want to give a shout out to?
I will say that I'm fortunate that I have a numerous number of people that I go to for support. Technically, my team is me. So I have been able to develop an amazing support group of people that are in developmental services, but also in other divisions like early intervention, behavioral health. Gina, who we heard from earlier, is one of those people that I get to be fortunate enough to look to as a support person. She lets me bounce ideas off of her. She has edited documents that I've written for me when I've just needed that editing eye, because once you write something and you see it so many times, you miss things. So I'm fortunate that I have so many wonderful colleagues here that are willing to be that support for me.
Okay, you're being neutral. You don't want to just give one.
It's hard to name just one. It is. It truly is.
Well, that's a good problem to have.
Yes.
So do you have anything you want to?
I do. I've got a couple questions.
All right.
So one of the things that I also get to do at work that I enjoy and have been doing since before I came to DBHDS is being a person-centered thinking trainer. So I go around the state and train people on person-centered practices and tools they can use to be more person-centered. This is something that I found that developmental services, or the world of developmental services, has really latched onto, but we haven't been able to bridge that gap with behavioral health as much. Do you have any thoughts or recommendations on how we can work within behavioral health to make sure that we're all providing person-centered services and person-centered practices in a more unified and cohesive way.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that question. And we had a great dialogue about this topic. And, I think it's one of those things, I don't want to say we take for granted. There's so many ways I think we can get the word out. We talked about lunch and learns. I think it is something that I would like to work on with this agency.
That would be wonderful. It's helpful to be reminded of certain practices or tools that we can use to help each other interact with each other in a more humanistic way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just regurgitate what I learned or what was shared with me, but some examples are like in group homes, developmental disability home, an individual, there's a schedule. The employees are following the schedule and the person doesn't. Maybe today I don't want to get out of bed at 8 a.m. just because the schedule said so, right? I'm still a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And the employee is not a warden, they're there to help them live their best life, not dictate what their life is. And the same goes for working with one another. Like this applies to so many areas of life that I have a task I have to do, and I've got to go to IT, and I need you to help me do this, and I need this yesterday. And we get so focused on the task, we forget about the person that's right there, right? And that's where I think this fits nicely within the one DBHDS as well.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
My second question relates to leadership. So I was very fortunate when I first came on, I got nominated and got to participate in VPSL 1. It taught me a lot of skills that I use in my job, but also skills that I get to use personally. So I feel very fortunate enough to kind of have the opportunity to be nurtured as a leader. What are other opportunities for other employees or people that work here at DBHDS who are interested in kind of fostering that leadership role and developing their skills?
Yeah, I'm glad that you benefited from that, and I hope you share that with all your colleagues.
Definitely, yes.
I hope to see you at VPSL 2 or System Lead or VPSL 3.
We'll get there at some point.
Those are all the things that I would encourage everyone to do. Professional development is something like I encourage everyone when we do these annual reviews or your initial counseling or evaluation, or sit down with your colleagues, peers, or boss, is to share your personal goals with each other. And if you want to be sitting in this seat, how can I help you get there? Those are the conversations we need to have with each other, is where do you want to be and how can I help you get there? And really mean it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there are so many opportunities within this agency. I encourage everyone to go to HR and see what is available. Professional development is not just limited to VPSL. If there is a way that we can work with you to accomplish those goals, again, within reason, I think nothing's off the table.
That's wonderful to hear.
Personal growth is so important. Again, we talk about pouring into each other, and we want to make sure that you're armed and equipped with the best trainings that you need to do your job. So, yeah.
Really appreciate that. Thank you. And I will be coming up. I've got some ideas, so I will be processing that with my supervisor.
I love it. Yeah, please. And it's coming. Just know it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, welcome back. We have Samantha McCloy. She's a service authorization consultant for Region 2. And we also have a special guest. This is a new program called Grow Your Own. You guys may have heard about it. We're growing our own.
Literally.
So who do we have here?
This is Titus Maverick McCloy. He was born June 8th.
Yeah.
On a very interesting Saturday morning.
And are you on maternity leave right now?
Yes, I am.
And
Yep.
you came in here to do this?
Yeah, I am. I know I'm a little bit of an overachiever, I guess, to some,
Sure.
but I wouldn't have passed up the opportunity if I was still working. So I wanted to come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, before we get started, can he come over here? Because I
Yeah.
think he and I want to ask you questions together.
Go ahead.
What's
Just be
up,
careful.
my man? Sorry, I have 4 littles.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
And
Okay.
he's not
It's been
shy.
so long. All right, now we're gonna ask Mama questions. Okay. Now, here's what we're gonna do. All right, how did you get into this field?
So I started off chasing my dreams first. I was a volleyball coach. And then I had a psych degree. And then when I started to have a family and grow my own, I decided that I wanted to be a part of something that would be fulfilling, to give me a purpose.
Sure.
And I decided to go into the field of helping others.
Yeah.
And really pulled on my heartstrings and got into a group home, working as a direct care associate, and then working maybe up to a supervisor, finding a passion for really helping them thrive where they're at. And then kind of had a career set in place and wanted to grow and be an example for my children, and got into case management. And then from there, I worked at Fairfax and flourished and wanted to grow more and learn more and be a bigger influence to providers and help them and the people that we serve that are that need the help.
Yeah.
And I had a dream set to come to the state, not knowing it then, but I told one of my colleagues on my first day of employment at Fairfax that I'm going to get to the state. And after about 5 years, an opportunity arose, and I was able to come in.
Well,
So,
we're
yeah.
so thankful that you're
Yeah.
here. And do you believe all that? Is that true what Mommy said?
It's true.
All right. Well, what about service authorization? Like, what is that specifically?
So service authorization is a unit within DBHDS that reviews any authorization request. So when somebody gets a waiver, whether it's a community living waiver, BI waiver, or the FIS waiver, there are certain requirements that have to be adhered to for policy with DMAS,
Right.
Medicaid, and the DD waiver system. So my role is to review those services to make sure that the providers and the case managers and everyone are accurately documenting the need for that service, so that way it fits that person's needs. And then I also have to make sure that they're eligible for their services as well. So making sure their Medicaid is in line, and really just making sure that their policies and everything are intact and that they're allowed to have those services.
Yeah. And so you interact with a lot of families.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I work in Northern Virginia, so there's a lot of people who are strong advocates, and they will call and ask for guidance and will help, or sometimes I'll give the families to the community resource specialists that we have within the unit. We work closely with other agencies. Sometimes the providers need more assistance too. There's so many new providers with all the changes that have been occurring. So the provider network, we work a lot with that department as well, to make sure that they're correctly showing the types of needs that are going to be met for that person that needs it. So I go out to the CSBs too to work with the support coordinators, give them like a kind of boots on the ground kind of person.
You have to be the.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on maternity leave and I'm here, so
I know.
I'm boots on the ground. So I like to go out to the CSBs when I have that opportunity. If I notice a trend or something within that they're not quite understanding, and I want to get it to where they're going to come up to par, because really it affects the people that are receiving the services. So
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for all that you do.
Yeah.
Especially for being here.
Yeah.
We'll switch interviewers. How about
Okay,
that?
that's a great idea.
Here. Now you're going to ask me some questions, okay?
Okay.
Peace out, Bean Sprout.
Okay. So, as you know, Governor Youngkin recently eliminated the Priority 1 waitlist for DD waiver recipients. And I was more curious as like how or like what does that mean for the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services and just the entire like unit as of care for anybody?
Well, that's a good question. Man, I've learned so much. I'm still learning, in this job. It's so surprising, all the things that go on here. And one of the things I've learned about these wait lists is that they're not necessarily static, right? The individual may move from priority 1 or 2 or 3, they move up and down depending on the circumstances in their lives. And so what we do know is that the people that are on the wait list, our folks are going to work behind the scenes to get these waivers allocated quickly. Now that's a whole entire operation in itself, right?
Mhm.
And there are certain slots that are assigned to certain regions, and again, so if you imagine, sometimes that might ebb or flow. Generally speaking, some regions have a higher need than others. Like Fairfax, Northern Virginia, has like the highest
Mhm.
concentration of individuals. And so one area that I think this is going to impact is provider development, because providers aren't necessarily I've heard, terrible stories of families having to move, let's
Mhm.
say from Central or Southwest Virginia, or some a part of Virginia where they don't have those supports that they need for
Mhm.
their individuals. So then they'll move to Fairfax
Mhm. Yeah.
because there is an immense availability of providers.
Yeah.
So then provider development tries to target these areas and encourage or support, and of course we get rate increases through Medicaid. That
Mhm.
is very helpful. But they've got their work cut out for them. Is how do we engage with providers to provide these supports, and can we get creative services? It just means that um, there's going to be a lot of work, especially coordination too between Medicaid and our agency, to make sure the allocation of the slots themselves,
Mhm.
right? As I mentioned. And also, we've been able to get legislation passed to where it used to be restricted. We couldn't move waivers from one region to
Yeah.
another. Now we're going to be able to do
Yep.
that. So again, as those needs change, we can meet those needs. That is a big lift. And then how do we get providers to provide those supports? That in itself is another lift. And then the CSBs. So we're going to be busy. I mean,
Mhm.
extremely busy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if we know the goal, what we're ending up with,
Yes.
it's all worth it. So I think we're all on board to get there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, I have another question, but it's kind of on the other end of the spectrum, right? So we provide a lot of services to people that qualify for the DD waiver. And I want to know, how does DBHDS provide, or how does DBHDS make sure that their services for people in the community that are underserved and don't necessarily qualify for the DD waiver at all?
One of the very unique things about Virginia is when we talk about community, our communities are so diverse, they're so different from, like, I don't know, just the landscape, mountains to the sea,
Mm-hmm.
the ocean.
Sounds like a song.
I know, right? It's like, wow, this is America. But it's really cool because what does that mean, and what does that mean to me being in this role and getting to see that is how our community services board take care of individuals and families. If maybe there isn't a specific program, and they'll knit together and create things in order to take care of the people in their communities. Because that, to me, what I've observed is, sorry, technical difficulties. Happens to me too, bud.
You're okay. It's sleepy.
He's like, I'm talking too much. But I guess communities and CSBs is exactly what they're made to be, right? To
Mhm.
meet their people where they are, and it's just tremendous to be part of this journey. And I know that doesn't answer it directly, but maybe it does. Is that I think they will, and they do try to do what they can if there is no coverage or even creative, entrepreneurial almost,
Mhm.
to create new things or try new things.
Yeah.
They can do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a bit of a sports buff.
Mhm.
I played Division I volleyball. It's kind of just totally not even related to DBHDS.
No big deal.
Just to get to know you a
Impressive.
little bit better. Yeah, thanks. It paid for my education. And I was able to coach collegiately too before I decided to steer away from that and, help the community.
Sure.
But what is your favorite sport?
I would say I like watching the Washington Commanders. I've been a fan since I can remember. I have an autographed Joe Theismann jersey.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, my
Love,
mom
love
loves
Art
it.
Monk, the 90s. Oh,
Okay.
just the best. Playing sports is different. I didn't. I used to breathe basketball, like
Okay.
playing basketball. Yeah. So I would say those two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Not much of a football fan, but
I'm making future Commanders fans. My girls.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
They're
Lord.
all in.
my son tries to get me to watch, but
We should watch because we are on a roll.
okay.
We
All
are
right.
winning.
Well, I'll start watching then.
All right.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. He
Boom.
liked it.
That's it.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, thank you for finishing strong with those really great words. This is my favorite part. We have a really exciting new initiative, and we do a drawing quarterly just to pull a name out so we can, all the people that have been submitted,
Yeah.
we compile those, and then we get to draw a name and give a shout out and
Nice.
a prize to this person. But I have a really special guest.
Okay.
Do you want to introduce this guest to do the drawing?
Yeah, absolutely. This is my daughter. Her name is Kira Sky McCloy.
Come on in, ma'am. Hey, how are you?
Yes, how are you?
All right. Now you get to pick the winner of this drawing. You just pull it out. You can look at it and then read it. Who's the lucky winner? What do you got? Cherish Chumley, RN, Piedmont Geriatric Hospital, Nursing. She's a dedicated team player. She provides leadership to staff on evening shift. She is caring and demonstrates compassion to a group of patients with challenging behaviors. She is a role model and is an asset to the organization. Thank you. And we'll see you next month. One DBHDS.